Clown ball pythons have dominated the reptile breeding world for the last several years. And if you are right now getting into the ball python breeding hobby in 2024, you're probably asking yourself whether or not it is a good idea to invest in the clown project, or if it is already oversaturated to the point that when you are able to make animals in this project, that there's going to be nobody who wants them and you will have a hard time selling these animals. So for this week's video, we want to talk about the pros and the cons of the clown project. My name's Steven with Leviathan Snakes, and let's jump in. The Clown Project started in 1996 by Dave and Tracy Barker. They had imported a male from Africa that had a weird head stamp and a fairly clean body pattern. They ended up growing him up, and in 1998 they bred him to some normals, and when all of the babies came out not looking like a clown, they proved that it was not an incomplete dominant or a dominant trait. So in 1997, actually, they had imported another group of animals that looked like the clown, and they ended up breeding the 1996 clown to some of the 1997 clowns, and then they produced the first visual clowns. At the same time that this was going on, Brian Barczyk of BHB Reptiles had acquired their own wild-caught, what would end up being known as a clown ball python, and he paired it to one of the VPI clown ball pythons, and they were able to produce their own clown ball pythons. And essentially with all of this work, they proved that the clown ball python morph was recessive. The phenotype of the clown ball python consists of a very, very distinct head stamp. There's nothing else in the hobby that looks like a clown head stamp. In addition to that, they often have a very, very strong black back, and they have teardrops that are coming down in between the alien heads, and some clowns are very clean, some clowns have a lot of pattern, but overall, the clown mutation, I would say, is primarily a pattern morph. And because it is such a strong pattern morph, it tends to do so well with so many other genes in the hobby. Since the Clown Project has been out for more than 20 years, there has been a lot of time for it to proliferate throughout the hobby. And because of this, you can find clowns at pretty much every single price level. If you go onto Morph Market right now, you can find clowns that are under $100, and you can find some clowns up to $30,000. So because of this, there's a huge spread, and I feel like that this means that there is something that anybody at any level can pick up and fit into the Clown Project. For this next section, I kind of want to talk about the market sentiment. And in previous videos, we've talked about how a high-end breeder has a completely different motivation with keeping animals versus somebody who's a pet keeper. So for the market sentiment part of this video, I've broken it into 4 different categories. And they are our pet keepers, our entry-level breeders, our enthusiast breeders, and the leading edge of the hobby. So for the pet keepers, I personally think that for the clown animals or Clown Project animals that are in the pet keeper range, which is generally under $500, I actually think that the sentiment is fairly mid. Honestly, I think that there are a lot of other animals that are in the pet range, that under $500 mark, that tend to be much more popular than just a clown ball python. I think that bananas, I think bells, I think pieds generally outcompete the clown animals when they get into that pet range, or at least the clown animals that are currently in that pet range. Once you get into the breeding part of the hobby though, I think this is where you really see the Clown Project shine. So for entry-level breeders, oftentimes they are trying to breed animals together that they can use as a foundation for their entire ball python breeding operation. In addition, entry-level breeders tend to be on a somewhat limited budget. So because you can find really cool clown animals for fairly inexpensive, and those exact clown animals can fit into projects once you get into the really, really high-end levels, I feel like that a lot of entry-level breeders end up picking up at least some clown animals. So I tend to think that the sentiment for clowns in the entry-level breeders is fairly strong. When you get into the enthusiast level breeders, I feel like that a lot of the enthusiast level breeders are trying to make animals that are going to put them right up there at the leading edge, even though they're not quite there yet. So because the leading edge of the ball python breeding world right now is multi-recessive projects, and clown goes so well with so many other recessives, I tend to think that the enthusiast level breeders are very, very bullish on clown. They really, really like it, and that you can still sell and buy a lot of clown animals once you're in this specific segment. Last is the leading edge breeders, and all day long I feel like that clown is the staple up here at the leading edge side of the hobby. Almost all of the leading edge animals have clown in them, and I personally think that if you are focusing on that leading edge, or if you want to get to the leading edge sign, clown is a must-have project. With the overview out of the way, let's talk about some of the pros. And personally, I think that the biggest pro of the clown ball python project is that the clown morph combos so well with so many other genes. And because it combos so well with so many other genes, this gives people the chance to make brand new animals, never have existed before, and they look amazing. Because with the pattern elements of clown, it is not so strong that it is overwhelming every other gene that gets put into them, and you can put in other genes, whether they're pattern genes, whether they're color genes, and you can see that they're clowns, but you can also see the other genes in them. So because of this, you're able to blend, and it's a really, really good canvas to build off of, and I think that this versatility, the fact that clown works with so many other projects, and it looks good in so many other projects, is one of the strongest aspects, one of the biggest pros for the entire clown project. I think that the second biggest pro for the clown project is that there is something in the clown project for anybody who wants to get into it. And because of this, it's not only limited to the people who have thousands upon thousands of dollars to invest in an individual animal. You can very easily get into the clown project with $1,000 or less, or even $500 and less. And depending on exactly what you want, you could potentially buy some clown animals in your very first year, and by the time that you are in the double, triple, even quad recessive projects, you could potentially still use those exact same females that you bought for your clown project in your first year with that triple visual clown male, and you can still make some really, really cool animals that will eventually still be in demand. Third pro that we want to talk about is I think that the clown project has probably the biggest market share of any project out there on Morph Market right now. So what this means for a new breeder is that there is already an established group of people who are in this project, and you don't necessarily have to convince people to get into it in order to buy the animals that you produce, because if you produce something that somebody else wants because it has the right genes for their project, they don't have any hesitation of picking it up because they're not jumping into a brand new project. Where if you're working with a significantly more rare gene, you might have to convince them that not only is that specific animal something that they want, but they actually want to work that entire project, and you don't really have to worry about that with clown because it is already so established within the hobby. Another quick pro that I want to talk about is that clown is one of the testable genes with Rare Genetics Incorporated. So because of this, when you're moving into those double, triple, quad recessive projects and you're getting pos het clown animals, it is huge because rather than growing up those pos hets 2 or 3 years in order to prove out whether or not they have the gene or not, you can just send in a shed to RGI and they will be able to tell you within 2 business days whether or not that animal is actually het clown. So head over to Morph Market, head over to Clutch, and definitely support them through buying one of their genetic tests. Last pro that I want to talk about is that I think that there is an incredibly strong high-end value with this. And I think this is super, super important if you're considering doing this as a business. If you are trying to do this in a spare bedroom or maybe in a shed out back behind your house or in a basement, space is a huge consideration. And because of the space consideration of breeding ball pythons, most people are not going to be able to have thousands of clutches every single year. And because of this, you really end up focusing on those higher value animals, those higher value clutches later on, so that way you can try to make a really, really strong return for your efforts. And the fact that clown has such a huge upside at the top end of its project, I feel like that this is a very, very good sign for the overall project and a very strong plus for anybody who wants to get into it. Now that we got the pros out of the way, let's talk about the cons of the clown ball python project. And I think that, at least right now in 2024, probably one of the biggest cons is that I do feel like that the clown project is a bit oversaturated, especially on the lower end. If you are looking at het clown animals, realistically at this point in time, there are so many people working the clown project that just a inchy het clown or maybe a black pastel het clown or something like that doesn't really charge much of a premium over just the inchy or just the black pastel, which is both good and bad because it is good for people who are buying into the project because they can buy animals that will work with this project for fairly cheap, but it's bad because that means it's going to be harder to sell those animals later on, and when you do sell them, they're not going to sell for a significant return. So overall, I think that there is a lot of competition in the lower end side of the clown project, and ultimately I would probably be prepared to have to sell a lot of the het clown animals, especially if they're het males, for the price that they would be if they didn't have the clown gene in them at all. The other big con to the clown project is I feel that the high-end value, that really comes from multi-recessive projects. And multi-recessive projects are a bit challenging because, one, the odds to hit the desired outcomes are really, really low. In addition to that, as we talked about the clown market being fairly big, once you dive into a double recessive project, and then once you go further down into a triple recessive project, that big market gets smaller and smaller and smaller because while there might be a ton of people who are interested in the clown project overall, once you move into the Sunset Ultramale clown project, that is a very, very tiny group of people, at least right now. So while you can get some really, really big money for these multi-recessive projects, you also have a much, much smaller market of people who are working them. So I think that it gets really, really important that you network yourself and you market yourself for whatever specific project you're working at, rather than just throwing something up on Morph Market and hoping that it sells. Overall, I personally think that if somebody wants to focus on breeders as their target market in any sort, whether that's entry-level breeders, whether that's enthusiast-level breeders, whether that's high-end breeders, I think that clown is almost a necessity for somebody who is wanting to work those really, really high-end projects. And because of this, I think that it's kind of a smart thing that even if clown isn't something that you're really, really stoked about, getting a couple females, maybe like 1 or 2 het clown or clown combo females, because you can pick them up for fairly inexpensively here in 2024. Like you can get a 2, 3, maybe even a 4 gene clown female for not a lot of money in the grand scheme of the hobby, and those animals will be huge later on down the road if a new recessive comes out and you decide that you really, really like that new recessive and you want to make some double hets, because then you already have some combo visual clown females or het clown females that you just send in the sheds to test once you end up getting the babies. And once you are able to make some combo double hets with whatever project that you're going to be excited about, I can almost guarantee that those animals are going to be very, very in demand because the clown is such a popular project. If I were going to get into the clown project right now in 2024, what I would probably do is I would probably pick up 3 or 4 visual clown females with maybe 2, 3, or 4 genes in them, depending on exactly what my budget would be. And if I really, really needed to, because maybe like money was tight, I would be willing to go down to het clown females for this. And then, in addition to the females, I would probably try to find a visual recessive male that is het for clown, because once you pair that visual recessive male that's het for clown to those females, you will end up making combo clowns that are het for whatever the other recessive trait that that male was part of, and those animals are going to be super useful for you working that double recessive project in the future, and they're going to be very, very in demand to anybody else who's working that double recessive project, because it doubles their odds of hitting whatever animal they want when they're working with a visual het versus a double het. And the fact that they have other genes in them, those are going to be huge for actually progressing these double, triple, and quad recessive projects in the future. So we hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe, but we will see you next week.